We'll get on to Salah in a second. Janusz, you've had your say on Pep, and Gab's just had his say on Arne Slot. Let's just isolate this for this game only. Given what Gab's rightly said, it was like the split strikers to allow the space in behind him. City's issue this season has been no Rodri, so pretty much no protection for the back four. So Curtis Jones took turns to kind of play the false nine position. Luis Diaz was in and around as well. Today, did Arne Slot outcoach Pep Guardiola?
Yeah, he did, but I think it was, if you look at this, both managers coming into this knew that their team weren't at their absolute best. I mean, it's easy for us to talk about now because, we found out what we knew about Manchester City. And I think that's what Arne Slot probably was banking on, because his team in the last couple of games wasn't at their great at their best. Today, early on, I just thought that Liverpool were timid as well, but they knew the longer they stay in the game, especially to play a little bit on the counter, he knew that Man City were not going to have the legs to deal with him for 90 minutes. And you look at that bench, as you said, look, I mean, part of Liverpool softness, if you will, in those games against Everton and Villa, for me, was the fact that Hakpo wasn't there. Because if Hakpo was 100%, I think this game would have been 3 or 4. We wouldn't have seen any other changes, because I think this was another thing that, of course, Arne Slot improved. I didn't mention that early on for this reason, because I knew we were going to come onto Hakpo, right? Just playing him in the position that Jurgen Klopp never even felt to play him in, which is his natural position on that left-hand side, and he's been absolutely tremendous. So I think this was a careful consideration. Liverpool did not play an incredible game today, but they knew what they needed to get done, because the opposition was so weak. And it's just funny to even say that, right? Because these two teams for years were deciding who's going to be the champions in this league. So it was a good performance. It was a smart performance in terms of how to play Curtis Jones. But as I think Gab said, or you, I'm not sure, there were really 3 players playing that position. Yeah. Szoboszlai alongside of him, and Luis Diaz changing positions with Curtis Jones as well.
Gab, when people reach the age of 32, most normal human beings start to slow down. Mohamed Salah is kind of going the other way. He's kind of speeding up. Here's some stats for you. This is his 5th 30-goal season in 8 for Liverpool. It's his 25th Premier League goal of the campaign. He scored in 6 consecutive Premier League games. He's now got 51 goal involvements, because he got the assist for Szoboszlai for the second, across all competitions, 30 goals and 21 assists. There is nothing to suggest that he's going to slow down anytime soon. So if the sticking point is duration of contract rather than money, should there be any debate the way that he's kept himself fit?
Look, I'm against the people who say, pay him what he wants, pay him what he wants. I think Liverpool are where they are because they've been smart about this. And, you can look at this, but people can also drop off fairly quickly. And you're going to have
Manchester
other
City
positions. Exactly. And, Kevin De Bruyne, too, was pretty darn good not that long ago. Now, obviously, Salah's been more durable and whatever, and we can raise all these points. There's a number at which it makes sense, both in terms of his wages and in terms of his contract lengths. And there's a number at which it doesn't make sense. And I think if you're going to trust, the nerds at Liverpool, Julian Ward and whatever else, all these guys who've come back, if you're going to trust them for their contributions in building Liverpool's first title-winning side under Klopp, I think you have to trust them here, that they're going to make the right decision. And maybe you're also going to trust in Salah a little bit. Look, Mohamed Salah has made a lot of money in his career, right? He has a couple years left. If he moves, I assume he already has obtained generational wealth. I would like to think that if he moves, he does it because he wants a different challenge, a new sporting challenge. And there's only one place in the world, realistically, where he can have that. He could go to Real Madrid as a free agent, and boom, how about that? Salah, Mbappe, Vinicius, lights out, and he would be a great fit.
Who's tracking back?
Unless that happens, and there's no indication that that's going to happen, people talk about, oh, Saudi Arabia. What? Because he's Muslim, he's got to go to Saudi Arabia? Come on now. I think the guy still has a ton of professional pride. And can you leverage that? Can you say, hey, Mohammed, listen, this is the reality. We can give you this much for this long because we want to make sure we still have a competitive team around you, and we need to spend money on this position and that position. And maybe you do the same thing to Van Dijk, and maybe you get some sort of team-friendly situation. I want to believe that this is something that they can do. I do not believe that Warner and John W. Henry are like, ooh, let's save on Mohamed Salah's contract so that we can take money out of the club and buy ourselves another gold toilet, because the reality is that's not what they've done thus far, right? So I have to believe that everybody can come together in a way that makes sense. Does everybody take a little step back? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal has to be a competitive Liverpool, ride this wave. You can maybe win the Champions League this year, and go for the Champions League and another title next season. And that's something that should make everybody happy.
It's funny you talk about the Liverpool ownership. I did an interview for ESPN FC with James Pallotta when he was at Roma, and he said they thought Liverpool had overpaid for Mohamed Salah when they did the deal. So it was Pallotta that paid for lunch because he felt that Liverpool had paid too much for Mohamed Salah. And look how that turned out. Janusz, every dynasty starts with that first championship. Today, you could argue it wasn't just a gap, it might have been a chasm. Certainly over the course of the season, Liverpool are miles better than anybody else. Could this be the start of Liverpool's dynasty?
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I think. I think if I were Liverpool, I'd double down on that. I know there's a price you can't cross, and Gab, correct me if I'm wrong. What's he on? Like 300 plus, right? 350 or close a week. So that's a lot of money. Obviously, he's going to want to have more. Do they have to spend that money? Probably not. But I think, the earnings that you can have, and if you want to be consider a little bit of a dynasty, I mean, Liverpool are in a position to do something big in the next couple of years. And whatever you earn from that, on and off the pitch is incredible, quite incredible. And spending the money, that kind of money on Salah and then somebody else, if you believe the rumors, right? I mean, Liverpool is going to have to spend not just on Salah if they want to keep him, but probably spend big on another one or two significant players, depending, of course, on what happens with the three players that we talk about. I do believe that at least two out of the three will stay. And I do believe, and in order for Liverpool to continue on this road, they need to keep Mohamed Salah. The risk is worth it. I still think they can recoup that money if need be. If he, as Gab said, becomes, De Bruyne all of a sudden, which is possible, of course, then I still believe there's a market where they can recoup at least half the money. So they absolutely need to keep him, and I believe that they will.
The following is subjective. You could argue that Liverpool are or are not the best team in Europe right now. Maybe it depends on the championship, or it depends on the competition, because Real Madrid seem to be a different animal in the Champions League. But where are Man City right now in the grand scheme of things, Gab?
I mean, they won't be winning the Champions League, obviously. I think the goal now has to be to make sure you get into next season's Champions League. In some ways, most of these people in the know think that the 130 charges, that we're supposed to get a verdict in early January, and now it's late February, we still don't have a verdict, but whatever the verdict is, it's going to be appealed, and then we won't have the result of that appeal until next season, right? So they have to proceed as normal. I think if you're Man City, what I would want to know if I were a Man City fan is who's running the club, right? Because Chiki Begiristain is leaving. He's in a lame duck situation. And obviously the guy from Sporting Lisbon is coming in, but he's still at Sporting Lisbon. So you just spent this enormous amount of money on Kusanov and Vitor Reis and Marmoush and Nico as well, which raised a lot of eyebrows. Who's doing this? What is the plan? How are the pieces going to fit in the summer? You still have a Bernardo Silva situation to deal with. You've got a Kevin De Bruyne situation to deal with. There's just a ton of question marks. And I think one of the other question marks, I'm sorry, it has to be Pep. I know he made a commitment, but he had made a commitment to Barcelona, and twice he resigned and then changed his mind and brought him back. This can't all weigh heavily on him. What I would love is, I would wish there was somebody else at Manchester City other than Pep who could come out and say, this is the plan, this is what we're doing. Instead, they hide behind lawyers, they hide, they simply push Pep out. I know he gets paid a lot of money to face difficult questions, including questions which really have nothing to do with him. But you have to have, I think, in terms of messaging with this fan base, you have to have an indication, a sense of, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve long term. This is what we're going to build the team around, and not have this whole thing about, well, if Bernardo wants to leave, he can leave. And, oh, well, bring back Gundogan. Have somebody maybe even just explain what was the strategy these last 2 seasons, right? I mean, Janusz mentioned before bringing in Savinho. The reason they could spend so much money in January, and they can spend an absolute boatload again in the summer and still be compliant with PSR, is that in the 2 previous years, they made an enormous amount of money. And they chose not to spend. Okay, so what is the strategy now? Why was there that strategy not to spend? Did you really think you could just add Savinho and then Gundogan and be fine? Who made that decision? Pep's going to say, oh, it was me, blame me. Okay, fine. But we know it couldn't have just been Pep, right? We 1,000% know that. We know that coaches get paid a lot of money to go in and toe company lines. I would like some sort of clarity, because you know what? There will be a post-Pep era there. There might even be a post-Abu Dhabi era, maybe even sooner than people think. And I think City fans are owed answers.
The way I think about it, it doesn't have to be as drastic, maybe, but I do agree that they're going to have to make a statement, and make a statement very, very quickly, because I still think that there's an excellent team in there. Because, I mean, we saw what happened early. No preseason. A lot of these guys were, if I think of, Kyle Walker when he was still there, when I think of Phil Foden, how bad they were for England, European Championships, how many of these players didn't have a preseason at all. There are other teams that had those issues, but they had perhaps more than other players. And we've seen how long it has taken these players to get in. Kyle Walker's not there. Phil Foden's not the same player, but I think there's still something in him. I look at Haaland, he's going to continue to score the goals. I think Ruben Dias and Akanji and Ake, if they have a healthy season, even Ederson, who everybody doesn't like anymore, is going to be much better than he is, because that defensive unit is still, for me, good enough. On the assumption that Rodri is going to come somewhere close to where he is, I still think that you're talking about Manchester City, that's going to be a very, very formidable force. However, that statement, and, I'm just throwing rumors, if indeed Pep Guardiola loves Florian Wirtz, then they have to deliver him at all costs. There's going to be 2 or 3 teams that are going to be fighting for him. Who knows? He may stay at Leverkusen, although obviously with Xabi Alonso, if he does go, it's going to be more difficult. But if they do get a player that Pep likes, like Florian Wirtz, perhaps 1 or 2 others, I look at this team, I look at the injuries they've had this season, and I think to myself that Manchester City are going to be fighting once again for the title next season, if that happens. But as Gab said, who's going to be making that decision, and how quickly can they make those decisions?
This was Liverpool's day at the Etihad. 2-0. They beat Man City. And the message for them is pretty clear tonight. Catch us if you can. Bye for now.